School Committee for October 17th. I think that's right. Could we all stand and pledge the allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Franti?
Here.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Here.
Mr. McGuire?
Here.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Here.
Mr. Sinella?
Here.
Ms. Ty?
Here.
Mayor Arrigo? Absent.
Can I have a motion to go out of order and take up public participation so we can cover the building committee and be updated with the Hill School?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Reardon, would you mind helping us out here?
Good evening, honorable members.
Microphone.
Did I miss something?
Name and address.
Technical man, thank you. My name's Stephen Reardon, and I am a member of this Hill School Building Committee. School Committee McGuire and Dr. Dakin were primarily responsible for reviewing and paying the bills and overseeing that portion of the project. And Dr. Dakin is out of town. He's a new grandfather for anybody who's interested in knowing that, who doesn't already know it. I can very proudly congratulate him on that. But he did ask me to come forward and go over a few details that have been outstanding on the project for some time now, and now at this point we're pretty close to fruition on the project. We're hoping that we will close the project out by the end of the year and have it accepted by the Mass School Building Authority and commissioned. There have been a few issues with the project, nothing overwhelming, but things that we've been have been kind of a stickler on, trying to get the project to be what we all hoped it would be. And while it's a very beautiful school, as with all projects like this, sometimes there are issues that linger. Again, we're at the point where we're anticipating to close the project out. We still have $2.5 million from the Mass School Building Authority that they'll pay once they commission the school. There is money in the budget. We are running at about $830,000 under budget, of which we still have that money, and we're using some of it right now to add additional furniture and equipment to the library and the music equipment for the school. But there will be surplus in the long run, which is a good thing. And that is our money, not the state's money. There have been some issues, as there are with all projects of this nature, that are called change orders. They're essentially changes that are made during the process that haven't been contracted for with the contractor, and they involve anything from things that just in planning and conception looked like they might work and then didn't work when they were actually installed. And so we have to ask the contractor to change it, and of course they naturally want to make some money on that. And it's always a negotiation project, and a negotiation rather in projects such as this nature. But we were able to negotiate a considerable amount of the change order cost down. The original claim was for about 50% more that we are going to agree to pay. So the original request is about $333,000. We now have about $131,000 that we've agreed to pay in change orders. Other outstanding issues, the heating system has been a work in project, a process for the last couple of years. We finally got it to the point, I think, where it's working properly. It has been, the warranty on the heating system has been extended a year as a result of it not being completely up to snuff till very recently. And then all these systems now are working according to their design. The other side of these contracting projects is what's called a punch list. That's things that the contractor doesn't complete, either doesn't complete or doesn't complete to the satisfaction of the owner being the city of Revere. And we've settled almost all of those issues. In fact, we have settled all the issues. And the issues that we weren't satisfied with, or the city, the building committee is going to deal with ourselves, are essentially around the trash compactor, the concrete slab in front of the school in the plaza, and the fencing around that area. But the city, we've agreed to take that on ourselves. We expect that the trash compactor, which has been an issue also because the design plan didn't quite fit what we really needed to do, and the equipment had to be changed, but we've agreed to purchase a trash compactor, and I expect that'll be completed by the end of the year as well. The other big issue is the poles on the opposite side of the street are up. The poles on the school side of the street are still in use, but we're very close to transferring those lines across the street to the new poles, including the one unsightly part of the school, which is the transformer that's sitting in the middle of the entryway to the school. We expect that's going to be across the street on the poles, and we'll be repairing the area in front of the school so it matches the rest of the decor of the school. And again, hopefully that'll be completed by the end of this calendar year. So that's about all there is in the project. If anybody has any questions, I'd be very happy to answer, as long as they're not too technically involved, because I am not a technical person. I'm an attorney. I should mention one other thing. We spent some time while we were going through the more contentious issues with the contractor, discussing litigation, but as we all became to agree that litigation is not the answer, and generally, as an attorney, I can tell you that it generally is not the answer. It's much better to negotiate these things, and it did take time, but we eventually and successfully, I believe, negotiated all our issues away. And again, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have what we expected and what we paid for.
Anyone on the committee have a question? Mr. McGuire?
Thank you, Vice Chair Rizzo. I can't tell you how lucky we were to have not only Dr. Dakin, myself, of course, but the attorney, Steve Reardon, to hold this contractor feet to the fire, so to say. We had a weak construction company that I think without the due diligence of Councilor Reardon, myself and Dr. Dakin would have pulled one over on the community. This is a school that's been going on. We've been on this committee for 3 years. The school has been open, but at the end of the day, we will have a surplus. We have a good school. It's going to be better, but I was proud to serve with Stephen, and I want to thank him for his diligence and thank him for running for school committee.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for that. And I you know, on the school, I think the school's great. I honestly, and maybe I'm a little biased, but I think because it was in Ward 4, what I represented when the school was started. But I think it's the best school that we did, despite the difficulties. Again, as you alluded to, the contractor. So yeah, I think it was worth all the work. That's the short story. And thank you very much for having me tonight.
Anyone else have a question? Ms. Ty?
Actually, just an observation. As Mr. Sinella always says, that we should not, we need to pick the lowest bidder, but the lowest responsible bidder. And I think this is a case here where this bidder was not responsible. We should not have done it. And I just want to put in a plug that when we start the new high school, that I know we will be starting, when we start the new high school, we need to be very, very careful and get people in there to watch it and not pick somebody. We had the same terrible experience with the Garfield school down there, and it took years, and we ended up rebuilding that school from the outside in and then fixing the walls on the inside going out. And so it is so difficult when you have to pick the lowest bidder. So we'll keep in mind to pick someone who is responsible.
Just so everybody knows, it wasn't so much that we picked the contractor, it's the State Building Authority picked it for us, is more like it. I don't think anybody would have selected this particular contractor based on their unfortunate record prior to this, but we were forced to take them, and, you know, as School Committeeman McGuire said, we did have to hold their feet to the fire, and that was probably why it took as long as it did to put the fire out. So, again, I think all in all, it worked out pretty good, despite the challenges.
If I can just add, I know that it wasn't our fault that we didn't do it. It wasn't our fault in the Garfield. But when we have been lucky on that, like the Paul Revere is a great school. We had a wonderful experience on building that, and so I'm just looking forward to having a good experience when we build a new high school.
Well, it'll take the same amount and maybe a greater amount of diligence, and I agree. We do have to remain vigilant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon, for your report. And at this time, would anyone else have a public, would like to participate in public participation? Mr. Chico.
Ralph DeChico, 49 Washington Street. I'm here, I just have a question that I'm here on behalf of my Commission on Disabilities. I haven't seen the plans, so I'm just curious as to if we have gotten any clarification that the telephone poles that are getting relocated, if they meet the ADA guidelines since they're going on the other side of the street from the planning department or whatnot, because I know with the rework on Park Ave, the size of the sidewalks there, that it's going to allow for enough clearance. So I haven't seen that, so I don't know if anybody has any clarification on that.
I'm going to refer it to Mr. McGuire, seeing that he's on the building committee.
As far as the ADA compliance, it's a national company. The city isn't doing it, so they have to conform to all state and federal regulations. It's not something the building committee is even part of. So if they don't do it right, then obviously there's something wrong with the system.
Just my question is that when the sidewalks were done, they were originally done that the poles are on the other side of the street. So I just don't know if we have the space on that side. So before they put them up, I think somebody from the city should double check. So or else it's going to come back onto the city, even though that they are doing it.
The poles are already up. It's the wires that are getting moved. The poles are coming down on the side of the stadium. And the box won't be a box on the sidewalk, the box will be on the pole. So that ugly thing you see in front of the school will be up.
Thank
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Chico. Anyone else have anything they want to add to public participation at this time? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to the next. Okay, we have a second to go back to the, pardon me? Oh, I knew that, but I was going to finish what we were doing. So we want to go back to regular order business. All in favor? With that, we have no recognitions, although we always have recognitions, but none in place for tonight. Number 3 would be superintendent's report. Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mrs. Rizzo. We have 4 items on the superintendent's report tonight, and the first one I'm really excited to share. It's a project that we told the committee about a little bit last year, and it involves a couple of our teachers who, on their own time, of their own volition, applied for and were granted a grant to do a cultural travel abroad trip. And these are 2 of our best teachers in the district. They teach at the Beachmont School. I know they've done a lot of work with the Moroccan population, bringing them in and building community relationships down there, along with their principal, Dr. Napier. And they are here to share more about their trip and their experience and the ways that the trip is shaping how they teach and what's happening at the Beachmont School. So I'm very, very proud to invite Irene Cassidy and Chelsea Pollock up to share more information about their trip.
So as Dr. Dr. Kelly said, we are 2 teachers from the Beachmont School, and thank you again for inviting us in to share about our project, which we've sort of dubbed Beachmont Abroad Morocco.
So, I'm sorry, can we ask you to go to the microphone just so that the audio will pick you up? I know that's a pain in the neck.
I don't think we might have lost our
Oh, no. I can always click for you if you want. You can just give,
Give it one more.
You want to shut the lights out? We want.
Yeah, is that all right then?
yep. Okay. Let me just go previous.
So just to say again, thank you so much for inviting us in to share about our project. We've kind of called our project Beachmont Abroad Morocco, and we're excited to share more about the project with you.
Okay, so just to introduce ourselves, my name is Irene Cassidy. I'm an ELL teacher at the Beachmont. I teach grades kindergarten and first. This is my 3rd year in Revere.
And I am Chelsea Pollock, also an ELL teacher at Beachmont in grades 4 and 5, and also an ELL teacher at Seacoast High School. Also my 3rd year in Revere.
Okay, so a little bit about why we chose Morocco. We started last fall. We sent out a cultural survey to all of our students, and through that we found that 20% of our students self-identified as Moroccan. So given this large population, we saw an opportunity to strengthen our own understanding of Moroccan culture, share some teaching implications with colleagues, increase visibility of Moroccan culture, and also build and strengthen our Moroccan ties with family.
So to tell you a little bit more about the organization that funded our grant and our grant application process, the group is called the Fund for Teachers. It's a national nonprofit that lets teachers design their own professional development to find a project that really suits their teaching context. So given the information that Irene shared with you about the results of our survey and knowing that we had this large population of Moroccans at the Beachmont, we thought this would be a perfect way to kind of focus our efforts on engaging that population. So I'll just read for you on the left side. This is the actual language of our goal from the grant, that our goal is to research the diverse culture of Morocco by visiting historic sites and home cities of our students, interviewing Moroccans about cultural norms, and participating in local traditions to infuse experiences into curriculum and strengthen school-home relationships with Moroccan families. The picture here shows us visiting with 2 of our Beachmont students who were on vacation back in Morocco, and so we shared a meal with their extended family at their grandmother's house. So we, on the right side of the slides, a quick overview of our process. So summer and fall of last year, we started gathering information about our Moroccan families and working with community leaders and staff at our school to really define our focus so that the project would be meaningful for our school. We submitted our application in January and in April received the award notification. We spent our 3 weeks in Morocco at the end of July and beginning of August, and we have 2 big projects upcoming as part of our implementation plan. Community night in November, which you're all invited to, and in January we'll be offering professional development at a principals meeting at our school, which we'll share a little bit more about in a few slides.
Okay, so a little bit about our planning phase. Like I said, we started with our cultural survey early in the year, and then we sent out a second one to our Moroccan families to identify specific places that they were from and what they thought that we should take away from a trip to Morocco. We also met with local Moroccans to learn more about the culture, and they were also instrumental in fine-tuning the details of our travel and setting up homestays with families that we had connections to through those local Moroccans. And we also surveyed our Beachmont colleagues to kind of gauge an understanding of Moroccan culture throughout staff and identify some areas that we could improve upon. So through all this research, we narrowed down our itinerary to 10 cities, and these included cities that were of Beachmont students and families, different places around the country, different physical landscapes, and also including culturally significant sites.
So our 3 weeks in Morocco, I highlighted here in red the tour that we took around the country. We were moving very quickly and visited 10 cities in that time, and we stayed primarily with host families that had some sort of connection to Massachusetts, either family, friends of students or some of the community organizers that we've been working with. It was a great experience to kind of see more of the authentic family culture. I think more of a rich experience than a typical tourist might have received. So we experienced a lot of the traditions of hospitality, home cooking, and we even were invited to a Moroccan wedding while we were there, which was quite an experience. Our trip took us through diverse landscapes. We went to the desert, the mountains, beaches, forests that remind me of where I grew up in New Hampshire. The hot 110-degree weather in the desert and cool temperatures that we would find at home as well. We saw a range of modern cities, ancient cities, and rural villages. And in each location, we tried to target cultural sites that would add some meaning to what we could take away from the trip. So we visited religious sites like mosques and churches, a lot of museums. We toured some government buildings, and in each city visited the markets and the old part of the city as we went, and visited some institutions of higher education.
Okay, so now we're going to take you on a little virtual tour of what we did. We first landed in Casablanca. This is one of our hosts, Hamza, and we also saw one of the world's largest mosques, that's Hassan II Mosque in Casablanca.
Rabat was our second stop, which is the capital city, and we were able to tour the Parliament building. We had sort of special access thanks to a local connection. It's not usually open to the public, so we felt really lucky to be able to see kind of behind the scenes in government. And we enjoyed a delicious seafood lunch and learned how to eat with our hands in the traditional Moroccan style.
After that, we went up to the north coast of Morocco in Tangier. Some really beautiful views up there, and you can also see Spain in the distance. It's only 8 miles away.
Our next stop was Chefchaouen, which is known as the Blue City, because of the distinctive blue colors that most of the buildings are painted. This is a smaller village up in the mountains, so we got to kind of contrast that with what we had seen in the busy cities.
After that, we went down into Fez. Fez is known for its handicrafts, so you can see on the left side, that's the tannery in Fez, and also on the right side, a nicely decorated pottery shop.
One of the highlights of our trip was participating in a camel trek out in the desert. So we traveled several hours by car down to a desert city called MERZOUGA, and we took from there an 1.5-hour camel ride out to a tent site, a nomadic tent site out on the sand dunes. So we spent the night there. It was really hot, and we pulled the mattresses out of the tent and slept under the stars. It was a really amazing experience. And we got up bright and early to see the sunrise, and then trekked back as quick as we could to avoid the August heat of the Sahara Desert.
After that, we went to Marrakesh, which is one of Morocco's most popular cities and destinations. We spent some time in the Medina, and also on the bottom left, that's Jem El Fana Square, another world-renowned main square. And we also visited the Theological College, Ben Youssef Madrasa.
Essaouira is known as the windy city in Morocco and provided much cooler temperatures, which was a relief coming out of the desert for us. Not really used to 110 degrees. We really enjoyed the city. It's beautiful right on the coast, and in particular the top right, Essaouira is known for these famous blue fishing boats, which was really some picturesque scenes.
We continued up the coast to Walidia, and we had just enough time to cool off by the ocean and have a seafood lunch with some of our hosts there.
Mohammedia was a really special place for us to visit because there are a lot of Moroccans in Revere that come from this small city outside of Casablanca. We toured around with Layla, who's the mother of some Beachmont students, so it was really special to experience the city with a local person. And the picture on the top right, I want to draw your attention to. This is a sort of boardwalk area along the beach, and a lot of Moroccans from this area have said that it has a similar feel to Revere Beach, and so that might explain part of why Moroccans from the city might have chosen Revere or, as a place that feels comfortable to make a home.
We also stopped in El Jadida, which is another city that students from our Beachmont school had ties to. It used to be a Portuguese city, so we also saw some of the Portuguese influence there. At the bottom right, you can see that the horse show we went to, this was called the Fantasia, and it's a huge cultural event in Morocco. They have it all over the country in different regions.
So these show some of the pictures of the families that we stayed with that really added so much meaning to our trip. So these are some Moroccans who live in Massachusetts who were traveling back for the summer, some family friends of people that we met through our grant planning process. And then again, the bottom right picture shows us visiting with some Beachmont students who were back on vacation. And the top right is we wore traditional kaftan gowns to the Moroccan wedding, which was really special.
So a couple of things about moving forward. We have 2 major events coming up. In November, we're going to have our Beachmont Abroad Morocco Community Night, where we'll invite students and their families and staff to come and view pictures and talk about some of our travels. And then next up in January, we'll be hosting a professional development to our colleagues with a focus on culturally proficient family communication, ideas for incorporating Moroccan culture into instruction, and also some strategies for increasing Moroccan culture school-wide.
So thanks in large part to the generosity of the families who hosted us while we were in Morocco, we were able to return to Revere with some of our grant funding intact. So we were able to invest about $500 into the purchase of Moroccan and Muslim interest books. So we're creating a lending library to share those resources with teachers throughout our building to try to provide some resources to increase the degree to which Moroccan culture is incorporated into just the daily life at our school.
And the goal of our Morocco project also ties into the larger goal of our Beachmont school to make all the diversity and the different cultures present at our school a celebrated thing. So we are going to be hosting our 2nd annual Beachmont Culture Night in April. The last one that we had last April was a huge success. We had 80 families in attendance with origins from all over 5 continents, and it was a really, really special night. We had food, we had some dancing, we even had some henna happening, and all students made some posters representative of their home countries, so it was really nice, and we hope you join us in April.
So if you're interested in learning more about our trip, you can visit our blog, which is listed there, or find us on Instagram at Beachmont Abroad, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about our project.
Any questions from committee members? Ms. Ty?
Not really a question. I'm just in awe of how well they planned this and what an interesting preparation you did. It's amazing. And how, you said there were 28% of the population?
20%.
20%, okay, in Beachmont. Does that compare, do you have any idea, to the rest of the city?
I'm not sure, but I think that would be really interesting information to compile, so maybe
Right.
that's something we can look into.
And would you have any plans to share any of this with any of the other schools who are teachers?
We're very open to it. We're kind of tackling Beachmont first, but definitely open to sharing what we've learned, and also, you know, ways that teachers can kind of take on this kind of professional development opportunities for themselves.
It also seems like the first step among many that we can take to increase the Moroccan culture and visibility in our schools.
And we're lucky because there is such a vibrant Moroccan community that's growing in Revere, so there are small steps that anyone can take to, you know, reach out and learn more about the culture without having to travel so far.
And to your knowledge, are you the first ones who took advantage of that grant? I don't know, maybe.
As far as I know, yes.
From Revere.
I'm not sure. It's just our 3rd year in Revere, so our long-term memory is short.
Yeah.
But
We're hoping they've inspired many colleagues after they see this presentation.
absolutely, and anyone that wants some information about the grant could definitely get in touch. We really had a great time working with them. So.
Yeah.
And you said you were going to do some professional development as well in the school too, so
Yeah.
you might end up doing more in other places too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have our email.
We would be open to that.
Wonderful, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Not only informative, but very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Any other members? Mrs. Gravellisi.
Thank you, Mayor Arrigo. You had mentioned that you were going to share with your colleagues with professional development some of your ideas of implementing some of their culture into the curriculum. Can you share any of that with us? Or is that privileged?
Some of it's probably still to be determined. We'll be
Still
happy
in
to
the
share
works.
information once it's been, finalized. But one thing in particular, thinking about the books that we've purchased, we were kind of envisioning that there are opportunities to share more about, like Ramadan, for example, giving information about holidays that people might not, outside the community, might not know about, but also increasing just the daily visibility of the culture. So including texts just for regular instruction that, reflect our students.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any other members? Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to accolade the sentiment of your adventurism, but your dedication to the school system. My only question I had was, we have a gentleman called Rashid that runs an organization in Revere who said, I will take you to Morocco, and I know the mayor, and he's given me he's a great gentleman. I was just curious if you had any interaction with him as a local representative.
Oh yes, he was part of a great team of local Moroccans, both in Revere, but in the surrounding cities, that connected us not only with host families, but we were able to meet with other teachers while we were there. So yeah, he was instrumental as part of the team.
I love to hear that he was part of this, and then you were mostly the biggest part of it. Thank you.
You should take him up on the offer, and we'll give you some travel advice.
I've been to Mexico, so I've been to Tangier for 30 years.
Any other members? Just one quick comment. This is a great example of what is so great about the city of Revere. And it's funny because I had a recent interaction with a young man. He's probably 12 years old. And I was in my office on Friday afternoon. He had come up to the window and just knocked on the window. The city hall was shut down because we closed down at 12:15. And I opened the window and I started talking to him and I said, "What do you love about the city?" And he said, "I love the fact that my friends are from all over the world. And I go to school with kids from all over the world." And I thought that was incredible. And this is a great example of the work that we're doing to continue that kind of notion. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Mr. Sinella.
Okay, that works. What, being French Morocco years ago, is French still the predominant language, or is it different dialects in different parts of the country, or what would be the national language?
So the national language is Darija, which is the Moroccan, Arabic dialect.
Okay.
So there's actually a couple languages at play. All the Moroccans read and write in modern standard Arabic, but the oral language is Darija, which is the dialect of Arabic. And there's also a group of people called Berber or Amazi, and they speak a different language as well. But all students around grade 3 learn French, so French is the official second language in Morocco.
Thank you.
And English. After that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great job.
That was unbelievable, ladies. Thank you so much, and thank you for being such a great example of the wonderful teachers that we're blessed to have here in Revere. I'd next like to call on Dr. Vidala, who has worked with a team of employees across the district, health teachers, phys ed teachers, food services manager, and even some partners from the city, such as Julie DeMauro, who's not able to make it here tonight, and school committee woman Stacy Rizzo took a lead role in developing our updated wellness policy, which I think that the way you could describe it is they've maybe brought it from the Middle Ages to current times, which is great. So Dr. Vidala will give us a presentation, and then we'll have discussion on that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I apologize in advance. This will not be as engaging as Ms. Pollock and Ms. Cassidy's presentation, which was excellent, by the way. As Dr. Kelly said, the Wellness Committee has been working on a new wellness policy, and basically the wellness policy is a written document that guides the district's effort to establish a safe and healthy environment. And that's the big charge that we have in all of our schools is to keep them safe and healthy and work with our students in order to, provide them with the best, not only physical wellness, but mental wellness and nutrition that we can provide. So over the past year, the Wellness Committee was charged with updating the wellness policy, which was sort of antiquated and vague. There was a provision that stipulated under the USDA Food and Nutrition Service that we should update it by July 1st. So we created a draft throughout the year, working with the Wellness Committee and updating the policy so that we can have an annual notification of this policy to all parents, and that will be done through our handbook and through our website, as well as a triannual assessment, which we hadn't assessed the policy before. So we've developed, working with the Wellness Committee, a pretty good policy. But I will say that we have a good policy, but we certainly have a great committee. And the reason why our committee is so good is because it is a really diverse committee. We have people from central office. We have a school committee, multiple school committee members who have participated in the Wellness Committee. We have our Director of Athletics as well as some coaches. We have representatives from Aramark and our food services. We have school nurses, health and wellness teachers. So we have middle school health teachers, high school health teachers. We have physical education teachers from all levels. We have parents on the committee. We have 2 students on the committee. This year's representatives are Christian Acuna and Emily DiGiulio. They do an excellent job. And one of the biggest strengths of our committee is that we have several community members. So we have Revere Rec is represented, Mass General Hospital has been a great partner, Revere on the Move, and we have our school-based health center. So we've also been working with our SUD Initiatives Office to include substance use disorders as another initiative of the wellness policy, and just really working to make sure that we're uncovering all areas of health and wellness and making sure that we address all those areas for the students. So the wellness policy that we created has 3 major goals and 3 major areas. So first is nutrition promotion and education. So that begins with our food services and just the offerings, the healthy offerings that we have, and our policies around the types of food that we serve and offer, not just at lunch, but also at breakfast, things that we sell in the cafeteria, fundraisers that we do, food at athletic events. Then we talked about our health and wellness curriculum, and there's a list of topics, age-appropriate topics at each grade level for our health and wellness to talk about nutrition, healthy eating habits, physical activity, talking about substance use, and age-appropriate curriculum at all levels. The next big phase was health, physical activity, and so we do talk about our physical education curriculum. We talked about recess at the elementary level. That's incorporated into the policy. We also have our athletic offerings and our walk to school, our other physical activity opportunities that we have. We do have several teachers at many grade levels who incorporate movement breaks and kinesthetic opportunities for kids during their classes. So that's included in our wellness policy. And finally, other school-based activities that promote student wellness. So one of the big things that we're promoting this year is the social-emotional learning, not only of students but of staff members, really taking a look at the mental health aspect, seeing if we can connect students to some of the partnerships that we have with MGH, our school-based health center. We have partnerships with the Home for Little Wanderers, and other things that promote our student wellness. So we work together through a process to update the policy with these specific areas. We had a template that was an overarching template that was recommended, and we worked, Mrs. Rizzo and Cheryl Cole and Julie DeMauro really worked to create a draft, and then from there the Wellness Committee took it and chunked it up and really made it make sense for Revere and the offerings that we have. So I have asked Michael Flynn, who's part of the Wellness Committee, to come and just speak on behalf of the teachers and the process that we put in, and he can say a few words about that.
Good evening, folks. Sorry about my address. Thank you. Just coming back from a cross-country race, so that's where I represent. We ran really well. Everybody got PR'd, but we ran against one of the best teams in the district, so I'm sorry, in the league. Like Dr. Vidala said, we meet once a month. We have probably 15 members. One thing that I think, like Dr. Vidala discussed, we opened it up. We're a little more broad this year when it comes to the social emotional piece. The first couple of years, I think this is my 4th year on wellness, and we were more with the athletics and the nutrition. This year, I think we're broadening it way more when it comes to the social emotional and wellness piece for that. But I think we scrubbed it a lot in June, getting it ready for July, broke it down piece by piece. If anybody has any questions, I've been a member for 4 years, and I think it's really helping our kids. And Cheryl Cole's been a godsend, Julie Demaro, people from MGH, Revere on the Moves. It's just been a really excellent community to help our students. If anybody has any questions?
Any members? Just a quick, I guess, comment or question. I know the focus is obviously on in-school, activities and policies, but and it was mentioned that Julie was involved, has been involved. Was there a piece about after school or when kids are home, how the city can be doing a better job of providing healthy alternatives for kids?
Absolutely. It's a big piece of, first, what we do in the school around the education, but also the awareness and the connection that we have with the community and our partnerships. So it's really important that we have Michael Hinojosa from the Revere Rec Department on the committee. We have Julie Demaro on the committee. So any initiatives such as the OFO bikes, the weekly updates that Revere Rec has been doing, we've really been working on aligning those initiatives in the district and throughout the city, and how we can push out information and share those topics so that our families are getting that information.
Excellent. And
we've included the fun run that we've had, which has been very successful over the last few years for students and parents.
And then in terms of community partners, I know MGH was mentioned, but Cambridge Health Alliance has a presence here in the city. East Boston Neighborhood Health Center will have a greater presence in the community. Are we thinking about expanding our partners on the community health side?
Yeah, absolutely, and we try to reach out to as many partners as we can, and there's an open invitation. Last year we had 18 members on the committee, and we're hoping to grow over 20. But we can put out that information and certainly share the dates of the next committee meetings. And we reached out to Nicole Silvestri and Julia Newhall to try to include them as well, because that's a growing area for wellness that we're looking to expand.
Excellent, great work. Ms. Rizzo?
And it's already been said, but I want to thank Cheryl Cole, because she's put in years of work into this, but just getting this document together, she put in an easy month of her own personal time, so I really appreciate the hard work, and it was a privilege to work with her. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve, I'm sorry.
Mr. McGuire?
I would also like to just make an observation after being into the school environment more in the last few months. The cafeterias do an excellent job about explaining the choices, especially for free breakfast. And then again at the lunchroom, take your vegetable. These are baked chips. They're not regular chips. They're better for you. So that education that you have instilled in your workers comes through to the children, which is very, very important. So tell the cafeterias I gave them a shout out.
Mrs. Rizzo?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the document for our health and wellness policy that's been updated.
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti?
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Thank you all very much. The next item on the superintendent's report actually involves Cheryl Cole again. And she is going to present some information to the committee tonight on unpaid meals policies and federal guidelines and requirements in that regard. So I invite Ms. Cole to the podium.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I do have to say that it needs to be known that Revere Public Schools would never deny a student a meal. Unfortunately, there are regulations that we have to abide by that state that we have to have an unpaid meal policy in place. So what I would like to do is just explain a little bit about that. The policy that is currently in place is a policy that has been in place for a number of years. I've been here 6 years. The same policy still exists, and it is a policy that works. What it does is it does not deny our students a meal, but it does provide to them an alternate meal. So there have been recent changes in regulations that state not only do we need to have a written policy in place, but we need to have a path of communication to make all stakeholders within the district aware of it, as well as parents and other community members. So we can go ahead and switch slides. So currently, the cost of a full paid lunch is $2.50. For students that are on reduced status, it's 40 cents. There's many times that children come and do not actually have lunch money with them. For that reason, we do have a charge policy in place where elementary students and middle school students are allowed to charge for those situations a balance of up to $15. After they reach that negative balance of $15, our unpaid meal policy states that an alternate meal must be provided. The alternate meal that's provided is a cheese sandwich, a choice of up to 2 vegetables, 2 fruit choices, and a choice of milk. So even though it is not the ideal meal that the student may have initially wanted, we are still providing them with the meal. When we get to the secondary level for our high school students, that balance is allowed to go up to $5. So at the secondary level, the students hopefully can communicate, hopefully are not holding the money or using it for other methods so that we can still provide them with the meal. There are several communication pieces that are involved with us to reach out to the parents of the students. Negative balance letters are sent to parents once a month. At the point of service, I'm sorry, we can switch the slide. At the point of service, there are cards that are handed to the students as well, just so that parents can be aware that students did not have lunch money on that day. And there's also communications that take place between building administrators and food services. So basically, there are great things that are happening within the district to avoid students being in those situations. But what we need to do is approve our unpaid meal policy so that it can become a written policy and determine what forms of communication we will make available to parents and students. Any questions?
Ms. Franti?
Cheryl, I know that, they have to pay. They have to pay for their lunches, and we give them a secondary lunch.
Mm-hmm.
How long can that go on for? I mean, say your kid gets to the balance of $15. They could let it run for a month and still get a secondary lunch. Are we charging them for the secondary lunch?
Yes, we are. We actually have to charge, even though it is an alternate meal. The meal that is provided to them as the alternate meal needs to be a meal that's also provided to other students as well. So for that reason, we do have to charge for that alternate meal. Again, the meal may not be the student's first choice, but it does accrue an additional negative balance.
Are we having a problem this year with collections?
We have collections that take place on an annual basis.
But are we having a problem that we have more than normal?
I would say it's probably about the same.
See?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right,
And
thank you.
again, the communication piece of it is something that we continue to work on. Assistant principals do a great job. And one of the most recent things that we are doing is again, handing out those cards at the point of service so that instead of a parent having to wait for that letter to come once a month, the students are being notified daily.
Thank you, Ms. Ferranti. Mr. Sinella?
When you made, when you made reference that they're being charged for the alternative, but it's not being collected.
In some cases, it is collected. We do accrue negative balances that grow over the course of the year. There are other regulations in place that state that the school district needs to eliminate those negative balance on an annual basis, but they can be carried forward with the student as well.
The parents on notification, are they aware of the programs that there is a free lunch application? Have these people filled out the free lunch or reduced lunch?
They are aware on the letters that are sent home on a monthly basis. There's a communication in terms of letting them know what they may be eligible for, and also the direct links to the websites for them to be able to apply for free reduced meals. The individual cards that are handed to the students when they are accruing a balance also have that information too. So I do believe the communication piece is out there. It's just a matter of either parents not applying. In some cases, it's just that they are forgetting to bring in their lunch money. That is why we have up to that negative $15 balance allowed.
But anyone forgetting occasionally to bring it,
yep.
That's understandable, but is listings kept of habituals?
Yes,
who
that is.
are, school's in session 131 days and they're 110 days behind?
Yep, that is managed at the local level, at the building level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sinella. Dr. Kelly?
Sure, so just a couple of follow-ups. We do have very few kids, Mr. Snella, who fall into the chronic issue category, and when we do identify those students, the assistant principals and the principal will work with the family to try to help them correct the situation and make sure that they are accessing any social service programs for which they're eligible. It's one of the things that we've been working more on. As you all know, we hired a new position in our heart department this year specifically to help families access public services, and we've partnered with the neighborhood developers and the Department of Transitional Assistance to help get those people priority enrollment, and that's been going very well. We have been able to sign up a number of families already through that program. I believe it's 8 families already, Mr. Vidala, Dr. Vidala. So we are showing progress, but it is, the thing is that we're mandated to have a written policy. And so I know that what Ms. Cole wants us to do is kind of figure out exactly what that policy is going to be and then write it down to put it in our handbooks. And so what I would like to do is have further discussion with the school committee so that we can figure out what belongs in that policy. And I'd also like to engage parents in this conversation through our monthly PTO meeting and see what their thoughts and ideas are. And at that point, we can work with Ms. Cole and get a draft document prepared that then the committee could vote on.
Mr. Chairman,
if that sounds okay.
If I may, I'm a little familiar with what, the procedural is being former assistant principal, but my concern, I happened to be at the Garfield School the other day, and I noticed 2 ice cream trucks. We had a situation at the Wayland School where children were holding their lunch monies to buy ice cream after school. Upon speaking to the vendors, they weren't too happy, but they were moved on. So I think that to look into, if they're permitting, technically, legally, they can be within, there's no ordinance that I know of in the city that requires them not to be. But, there was an onslaught of children waiting to buy ice cream, and I'm quite certain a few of them had lunch money that wasn't spent on lunch. Thank you.
I see all the teachers nodding, Fred.
Ms. Chai?
When they get this, alternative lunch, what price do they pay for it? If they are on free and reduced lunch, do they pay the free and reduced price?
If they're free, it does not apply.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't have said free. Reduced.
But for reduced, it would be the 40 cents.
Okay.
And a paid student, it is the full price.
Because
there are students out there who actually choose what we provide for the alternative meal. There are students that choose that every day. So we cannot
vegetarians
we cannot put the district in a situation where students would be choosing that. What you mentioned about the ice cream truck, though, Mr. Sinala, one of the reasons I hope that is not the case, and that it's just students that are occasionally or parents forgetting to give lunch money. But for that reason, when we notify them daily versus that monthly letter, then parents are more aware of it. So hopefully we can avoid that with that system in
So,
place.
If I could just follow up. So when they get up there in the cashier, so does the cashier get a flash then about how much money is left on the
Yes.
card? And that's when the cashier
Yep.
says to them,
And we always try to do it very discreetly
uh-huh,
for the student.
right, because, we don't want to
Absolutely.
embarrass anybody.
Absolutely
and,
not, no.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe it'd be proper to move that the superintendent put together a committee to come up with this. So I'll move that we do that.
Mr. Chairman, just one more follow-up. Another problem, Josh, we used to have is that parents who are receiving reduced lunch are under the premise that it's free. So a lot of the the situations that we did have, that it were most of the children who were on the reduced, that were saying, no, I'm free.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've put this back to the local level for the schools to handle it, because the assistant principals, as you know, do have a very good relationship with the families. And that's why these arbitrary numbers are low in relation to a balance of $15, so that we can really get it early. And I would say that there's probably very few students who exceed $30, $40, $50. I don't think that number is very high at all. We're really getting it. So when you mentioned, what about a child who's going 110 days, that doesn't happen. I think that's why we're really on top of it.
Thank you.
Great.
Any other members?
1 minute, please. Okay, because that's what I was going to suggest, that we kind of work it out with Dr. Kelly and then include parents.
I think since you always do the policy, then I think that between the superintendent and Ms. Rizzo and the policy committee, we can work out whatever we need to in the writing, so
So
I'll make
we'll
that
refer
motion.
this to the policy committee?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll second it.
Second.
All in favor, all opposed?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you, Sharon.
The next item on the superintendent's report is going to be a difficult one for me. As you can see, those who are looking at an agenda, it says that Mrs. Kelly's retirement is imminent, and that's Mrs. Kelly, not me, so. But Barbara Kelly has been an incredible asset to the Revere Public Schools. She really has been an incredible leader at the Paul Revere School, working with teachers and parents and governing board members to bring the first innovation school in the state of Massachusetts. I think a lot of people forget that when we're so many years away from the start, but she really was the very first principal of any innovation school in the state of Massachusetts. And we were, just so blessed to have her here in Revere, and for that innovation school to be the Paul Revere Innovation School in Revere. So we're, without a doubt, going to be heartbroken for her to step down. The one thing that really makes me happy is Barbara has agreed to still play a role in the Revere Public Schools. I know that she's expressed an interest in serving as a community member on the governing board in the future, which will be a great legacy. And she has been the kind of leader who has created a legacy where the assistant principal and the teachers in that building, if she needs to take a day off, they can run that building without her. She has empowered them to be leaders in their own right. So I know that the teachers, and I know that Mrs. Quirk and the custodians and the secretaries and the paraprofessionals and everybody who works at the Paul Revere School are going to be ready to step up and try to fill Barbara's shoes, their gigantic shoes. Picture the old lady who lived in a shoe. Not that Barbara's old, but that size of a shoe. I mean, it's a huge shoe. But they're well positioned, and they've been working very hard to bring the school to the next level of success. So I did want to take just a minute to read Barbara's retirement letter, as I told her I was going to do. And then I'm going to invite one of the governing board members, Ralph DeChico, to come up and talk about the conversations that the governing board has been having in anticipation of this letter. So the letter is dated October 10th, and it's addressed to me. It says, "I guess it could be said that I have now come full circle in my educational life. Growing up in Revere and attending Revere Public Schools, I could not have imagined that I would be finishing my career as principal in that very school system. Having spent over 4 wonderful decades in education as a teacher, a vice principal, a principal, the time has come to close the book. So after much thought and with a lot of mixed emotions, I have decided it is time to retire from my position as the principal of the Paul Revere Innovation School. My retirement will be effective July 3rd, 2018. My years at this school have been the best years of my working life, and my many positive experiences here, both professional and personal, will always be fondly remembered. I hope you will extend an invitation to me to visit occasionally, since this school and those who have passed through it have made a huge impact on me. Finally, I would like to thank everyone within our excellent school district and let you know how pleased I am to have the opportunity to serve you for the past several years. Many thanks to all of you again. It's been a privilege to work with you. Sincerely, Barbara Kelly.
What a beautiful letter.
We're not accepting.
We don't accept.
We don't accept. Wave the eye.
Is there a motion to not accept that letter? Oh, I wish we could do that, but, you know, free will.
I'm just so happy I got her bubbly personality and optimism.
Yeah. So I guess with that, I will invite Mr. DeCicco up to speak about what the governing board has been talking about.
I was promised that I didn't have to take 3 minutes. I just have a handout for all school committee members, if you can just take one and pass it down. I really wish I didn't have to do this. This was a day that I knew was coming, but wish it wasn't. And this should just be one each.
Oh, there's just one?
Yeah. It's two-sided, but just one each.
Cost effective.
No, this is just for your information after. Like I stated, I really wish I didn't have to do this. Dear school committee members, as Dr. Kelly just shared, Principal Kelly has submitted her letter of retirement dated for this upcoming July. We all wish Ms. Kelly well, but realize we have very important task ahead of us to find her replacement. She leaves very big shoes to fill. The governing board has begun planning around next steps and a timeline around the duties with the election process of a new principal. According to the innovation plan, it is the responsibility and duty of the governing board to interview and recommend candidates to be submitted to the superintendent for final approval. Please see handouts that I gave you, page 17 and 18 of the innovation plan. At this time, the governing board wanted to inform the school committee of this process. Over the next 2 governing board meetings, we plan to develop questions and scenarios in a protocol where we may shadow the candidate at their current place of employment. Our intent is to start this process in January and submit the candidates' names to Dr. Kelly by the end of January, beginning of February at the latest. We are asking if it will be possible to hire the new principal by March 2018 and have this candidate transition with Mrs. Kelly, therefore creating a seamless transition for the new school year. We feel it would be a great benefit for this candidate to be able to spend time with Principal Kelly so they would be able to see all the intricacies and best practices of the Paul Revere Innovation School that Principal Kelly has established. We do know that there will only be one Principal Kelly, but if the next candidate can gain any help and information from her during our day-to-day school environment, that would be very beneficial. That would be a very beneficial asset to them. This is where we come to you, unsure of funding for the possibility of this happening in March. We look to you for your support and guidance around the start time. Thank you for your time in this matter. Ralph DeCicco, co-chair of the Paul Revere Governing Board. If anybody has any questions.
Any members have any questions? Mr. Franti?
Mr. Chairman, it's probably to Dr. Kelly. Are we going to be able to fund those 3 or 4 months that we need to if we have something for March?
So it's the challenge is that we have not budgeted for it. That's the case. We will be looking at the final numbers when the city comes back with the year-end closeout from fiscal 17. And there's a possibility that there could be some money in that that we have not yet allocated. And so if there were, then the committee would have the discretion to allocate funds in that direction. I'll know better exactly. I know they closed the billing today at 3 o'clock, so we anticipate that we'll have our final figures within the next week.
All right, thank you.
How long do we expect the process to take?
Well, the way that we have, the way that we have it is that the interviewing and question process should start in January and February, but we want to try and have some candidates to Dr. Kelly by mid-February. She, until makes the final decision. So the time frame will be basically depending upon her.
And, it might also be the case that the person you identify or the candidates that you suggest already have a job and aren't able to come and do an overlap. It might be something where we want to budget in the next fiscal year to have Mrs. Kelly do some work over the summer with the new person, or, I think what the governing board needs to know is that if it's possible, that you would support the idea of an overlap in some way.
So I'd like to make a motion, because it is a finance, that we take everything he said into advisement and look at this, it's a long motion. Take it into advisement and talk to Dr. Kelly to see where we're at financially.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Mr. Sinell.
I think that prior to a vote being taken, which is not going to alter it anyway, I think that the superintendent should at least explain to the viewing audience the term governing board has been mentioned time and time again in the different speakers. And I think that most people in the community may not realize that the school committee does not govern, the Revere School Committee does not govern the Paul Revere. They have their own officials. The only tie-in is with the superintendent and the final say. That is not before the committee. Funding and everything on that aspect of it. So if you could just tweak that maybe for a minute with the concept of the innovative school, taking it away. We have the authority to salaries, and they're part of the teacher's contract, but they are an entity unto themselves. Thank you.
So just briefly, an innovation school is a different has a different governing structure than most traditional public schools do. As Mr. Sinella mentioned, there is some leeway in governance from the school committee, and there's also some leeway in oversight from the Teachers Association. Those are agreements that the school committee and the Teachers Association have to sign on to in order for a school to obtain innovation school status. And for all of these years, the school committee and the teachers union have agreed to that so that the Paul Revere School can exist the way that it does. Things that are a little bit different at the Paul Revere than at our school, our teaching contracts dictate what time teachers start, what time they end, how early they need to be in before that start of school day, how late they need to stay after. The autonomies that the innovation status gives to the school allows the Paul Revere to set their own schedule. So the governing board, which is comprised of parents, teachers, community members, and the principal, were able to sit together and say, you know what schedule makes more sense for us and our kids? It would be if we took those extra minutes and repurposed them a little bit, and some people came in at this time and other people came in at that time, and the kids could have a longer day, and we would do an early release on Wednesdays so that we could have the kind of professional development that all teachers need, but that most can't fit into a traditional school day. And we're going to work with community partners to provide the child care that parents need on those early release days. And it gives them those kinds of autonomies to really restructure what the day looks like in a way that's meaningful and purposeful for the families and the kids that the school serves. So it does mean that there are some restrictions, like Fred is saying, where there might be different things in place that a school committee might have a particular policy. The governing board can decide to stray from that a little bit. Now, in the example of the Paul Revere School in Revere, they have largely aligned with the school district. they've experimented, as I mentioned, with their schedule. It's very different than other schools. And for a couple of years, they were attending school on days when the rest of the district was closed. They decided this year that they didn't like that. It left them feeling misaligned with the rest of the district, and they received feedback from parents who had kids at multiple schools that they found it cumbersome to have some kids with school on one day, but other kids who didn't have school that day, and now they needed 2 different days that they needed to find childcare. The great thing about the Paul Revere Governing Board is that they listen, and they take that kind of feedback and they transform their mission each year based on the feedback that they get from the parents and the students and the teachers. So they do have those autonomies, they do have the rights to do things differently, but I think that the team at the Paul Revere has been very judicious in deciding which leniencies they're going to adopt. And they still do. The fact that Ralph is here today asking the committee to consider his proposal, the governing board's proposal, is because they recognize that they need you. Because you do determine their budgets and you do determine their financing one way or another, you know, so I hope that helps the people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One other thing that I'd just like to add, there are 55 innovation schools in the state. I'd say the other, and we're one of 55, I can clearly state that the other 54 innovation schools have come to Revere to see how Mrs. Kelly has run the Paul Revere School, and that's just stating how great she's done of a job, and she will greatly be missed.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Mr. Chico, and that's my concern, is that there are big shoes to be filled. And due diligence hopefully will be the reward, because if it is a person of lesser ability or lesser compassion, then the whole thing could be a wash. So that's why I'm expressing my concern, is there another Mrs. Kelly?
Thank you, Mrs. Sinella. Any other members? There was a motion on the table from Mrs. Rizzo. Second. All in favor, all opposed? So ordered. Next item on our agenda, Ms. Dr. Kelly.
May I interrupt for just a moment?
Yeah, of course.
So that is the end of the superintendent's report, but I know that the next item on the agenda is the student representative report, and I just wanted to take a minute to introduce our newest school committee member, and it is Henry Batista, who's sitting at the end of the dais here and has done a phenomenal job helping everybody who's spoken tonight figure out how to work that microphone. His first act as a school committee member, but Henry comes to Revere High School. He's a senior this year. He started his career in the Revere Public Schools at the Paul Revere, of all schools. Maybe he can speak to us a little bit about that. And then he went to the Rumney Marsh Academy, and now he's finishing up at Revere High School. So I just wanted to say welcome to Henry. He hasn't decided yet where he's going to go to college next year, but we're all going to help him make that decision, right? Over the course of this next year as we influence him. So just welcome, Henry.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone. Okay, so can I?
Yeah.
All right. So Revere High School recently had their student council elections on September 29th, and I'm just gonna list the names of the people who were elected class officers. So for freshmen, we have Gilbert Oviedo as treasurer, Lucas Hurtado as secretary, Juliana De Chico as VP, Sofia Garcia as president. For sophomores, we have Sophia Gendro as treasurer, Olaya Laudi as secretary, Jason Acosta as vice president, Michael Adolphus as president. Juniors, we have Brendan Godino as treasurer, Christian Acuna as secretary, Mayanka Maristal as vice president, and Jenna Wells as president. And then seniors, we have James O'Donnell as treasurer, Taylor Jufrey Catalano as secretary, me, Henry Batista as vice president, and Megan Nguyen as president.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So this was the freshman, sophomore, and junior's first year as doing electronic voting. The seniors did not participate in voting electronically just because we were so used to voting on paper ballots that we felt that some students wouldn't want to adapt to electronic voting and just wouldn't be appealed to it. So, yeah, it was the first year electronic voting, and all the student advisors said that they're gonna continue this with the following years. This year, regarding caps and gowns, seniors voted on whether they wanted to do the traditional 2 colors, blue and white, or if they wanted to do 1 color cap and gown. The idea behind 1 color was to show unity as a graduating class, and 1 color graduations are becoming popular across the state. Although the vote was close, seniors ended up voting for the 2 color traditional blue and white caps and gowns, but I personally, and I asked a couple of people, they wouldn't be surprised if next year's seniors would be wanting 1 color as their caps and gowns, and to kind of break from the traditional attire. Last thing, Thursday, October 26th, it's the Class of 18's 3rd Annual Haunted Hallways. It's going to be from 5 to 8 p.m., $7 at the door at Revere High School. Any questions?
Any members have any questions? Welcome. So who can go to haunted hallways?
Anybody is welcome to Haunted Hallways. Our targeted audience are like elementary schoolers, roughly like 4th graders and up, just because there are some scary stuff like pop-ups and everything. Middle schoolers tend to go a lot, but everyone is welcome.
Everyone's welcome?
Everyone.
Okay, great. Maybe it might not be an appropriate place for my 2-year-old, but or my 7-month-old, but traumatized. Yeah. Thank you, Henry. Next item on our agenda is public participation.
We've done that.
Oh, wow. That's what I get for coming a little late. My apologies. Did we go through the consent calendar?
We did in the back, so we just need to vote it.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a consent calendar. Roll call.
Mr. Ferranti.
Yes.
Ms. Gravellisi.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire.
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo.
Yes.
Mr. Sinella.
Yes.
Ms. Ty.
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo.
Yes. The report of subcommittees. Ms. Gravellisi? None. Old business? There is none. New business? There is none. School committee interests. Mrs. Rizzo.
No, I'll let her go first.
Ms. Ty.
On Election Day, November 7th, the voters are going to have an opportunity to vote for tax relief for seniors. And I'd like to put in a bid for it. Mainly because I know how many grandparents we have raising grandchildren. They live in their own homes, they send their children to school, and even though we don't have any records on exactly how many there are, I can tell you at least anecdotally how many of them have called me and asked for help. So I compliment the mayor on putting this forward, and I'd just like to put in that bid that people would read it carefully, understand what it is. It would go only to those who meet the economic guidelines, but we do have an opportunity to vote for a 10% residential tax exemption for seniors who live in their own home. And I think that shows how much we care about people who stay here, who have raised their families here, still live here, and who want to stay in their own homes. So I would urge people to vote yes for that 10% residential tax reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ty, and I commend your foresight to bring this up during the school committee interest agenda item. And in terms of the reason why we've pushed for it, as you said, the city is in a good financial situation. We have an opportunity to give a small amount compared to the $180 million budget that we have, a small amount back to our seniors. And it is our seniors who are at the most vulnerable place, right? We're talking about seniors who are 65 and older, who live in their home, own that home and are on fixed income, and that income by state law is under $57,000. Those are the individuals, and I know a number of them, but those are the individuals that are at the greatest risk for not being able to pay for their medication, not being able to pay for groceries, or not paying a utility bill. We want to make sure that we're providing whatever relief we can to those individuals, because at the end of the day, those individuals who have lived in this community for a long time have a lot of, a lot of good things to offer. And they're people that should be allowed and able to stay in their homes. So I appreciate your support on this issue, and I do hope that folks get out and vote on question 1, and that they vote in the affirmative. Any other members? With that, Mrs. Rizzo?
Yeah, go ahead. School committee. I just wanted to say, being on the board of directors for MASC, it is so nice to see different people from all over the state. This year at the superintendent and school committee conference, we voted to give our Legislator of the Year award to one of our neighbors who also at a short time ago represented, I know, my ward. So our Legislator of the Year award will be going to Sal DiDomenico. He has sponsored so many of our association bills at the State House. He's been a strong supporter of our legislative priorities, and as he's moved up to the leadership ladder, he has taken on so many roles that really help the education, not just in Revere and Everett, but throughout the state, and they all look at him. So I'm proud to say he will be our award winner this year. Great. So, yep, great. I appreciate it.
Great news. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Any other members?
Did you call me Mr. Rizzo?
Mrs. Rizzo.
I think you called me Mr.
The next item
I have to
is
put signs.
motions. Mr. Sinella.
With what was said by the previous speaker, I think to give it a little more authority, that I move that the Vice Chair, Ms. Rizzo, be allowed to represent as a delegate at the Mass MASC November 1st meeting.
Second?
Second. Roll call? Roll call.
Mr. Franti?
Yes.
Ms. Grabelisi?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Mrs. Rizzo?
Yes.
Mr. Sinella?
Yes.
Ms. Ty?
Yes.
Mayor Arrigo?
Yes.
Mr. Arrigo, can I just add to that, Mayor Arrigo? It just
Brian, Mayor Arrigo.
whatever.
Mr. Arrigo, it's all good.
Friend. Every one of
Kid.
us received handbooks on the resolutions. Some of them consisting of Affordable Care Act, the Chapter 70 funding, and also the circuit breaking funding. So if you could kindly look it over within the next couple of weeks if you have questions, just to give me some guidance on which way us as a board wants to vote on it. I'd appreciate it. And thanks for the support.
Great. Thank you. Seeing no other business before the committee, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
And the next school committee meeting will be November 21st at 6 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.